Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay, guys, original link to the video, top of the description. My name is Connor. I like to learn things. So be ready to learn, or you guys are always at teaching me things down in the comments. So that's what I do. I would like to learn things on YouTube. If you would like to join that journey, make sure to subscribe, hit all the buttons. Let's go. Epic History, one of my favorite channels on YouTube, period, and my favorite history channel, I think. Let's go. Supreme ruler of Russia, rise of Admiral Kolchak. Let's go. So Russian Civil War.
November 1918. In Western Europe, the 4-year slaughter of World War I is drawing to an end. But across the former Russian Empire, a new conflict has broken out. A civil war that rages from Central Europe to the Pacific and will claim an estimated 9 million lives. Lenin.
9 million? I know the Russians lost something like 21 to 24 million people in World War II. How many did they lose in World War I? And could they have actually lost more people in the Civil War?
The Bolsheviks and their new Soviet Republic battle for survival against their many enemies, collectively known as the Whites. The Whites' great hope, their newly appointed supreme ruler of Russia, Admiral Alexander Kolchak. He is a war hero, a man of duty and discipline, who believes above all in service to the motherland. Millions look to him to crush the Bolsheviks, avenge the murdered Tsar, and save Russia from chaos and collapse.
Okay, so I wondered if they were a pro-Tsarist force that wanted to defeat the people who overthrew the Tsar and replace him with a new Tsar, or if they were just also anti-Tsar, just as the Reds were, but they just wanted a different leader. So it seems they were Tsarists.
This is the extraordinary tale of the life and death of Admiral Kolchak, Russia's only supreme ruler. The Arctic Ocean, 1900. Russian scientific vessel Zarya sails east on a voyage of discovery to the outer fringes of the Russian Empire. The expedition leader is Baron Edward von Toll, a renowned Russian explorer and geologist. He intends to explore the Arctic Ocean and discover Sannikov Land, a near-mythical landmass rumored to lie north of the Novosibirsk Islands. Among his crew, 26-year-old Naval Lieutenant Alexander Vasilyevich Kolchak.
Guys, I just watched a video last night. I love Arctic and Antarctic expedition videos, like when I'm going to sleep. And most of it is in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the one I saw last night was about Canadians trying to go and claim this island here. And it was a failed expedition where a lot of people died, and it was pretty terrifying. That was off topic, sorry.
Mythical landmass, rumored to lie north of the Novosibirsk Islands. Among his crew, 26-year-old Naval Lieutenant Alexander Vasilyevich Kolchak. Kolchak had been a brilliant naval cadet, but service aboard the Petropavlovsk, one of Russia's newest battleships, had bored him. Kolchak had a passion for scientific discovery and oceanography, and a thirst for adventure. When Baron Toll asked him to join his expedition, he leapt at the chance. The dawn of the 20th century is an age of intense imperial rivalry and scientific exploration. Russia, under the autocratic reign of Tsar Nicholas II, seeks to modernize and learn more about its vast eastern territories. Toll's expedition is part of this process, and and proves as dramatic as any tale in the annals of polar exploration. Toll was a deeply ambitious leader and expert geologist, but knew little about the sea. His ship, Zarya, was in poor condition and ill-suited for long voyages in the ice. Nevertheless, the expedition spent 2 years exploring the frozen coast, ice floes, and islands of Russia's Arctic North, and learn more about its vast eastern...
What happened there?
Exploring the frozen coast, ice floes, and islands of Russia's Arctic North. On one occasion, Toll was nearly drowned by a walrus. Kolchak was pursued by polar bears. In May 1902, frustrated by his failure to find Sannikov Land, Toll took an extremely dangerous decision. With Zarya trapped in sea ice, he set off with 3 men traveling by sled to reach Bennett Island.
Guys, I watched so many videos about with such similar. It's so weird because I feel like this would be something that I'd listen to in bed, but I'm reacting to it with you guys. Love it.
Zarya broke free of the ice a month later and set off to collect him. But facing impenetrable ice and running out of coal, Zarya had to turn back. Toll and his team were stranded. Lieutenant Kolchak had distinguished himself as a key member of the expedition and a loyal comrade to Baron Toll. He was determined their leader should not be abandoned. Returning 3,500 miles overland to St. Petersburg, Kolchak helped to organize a rescue mission. His plan seemed insane: to reach Bennett Island without a ship, using only sleds and small boats. But in the absence of better options, his proposal was approved. Kolchak postponed his own wedding to return to the Arctic and begin preparations. On the 5th of May 1903, Kolchak's 17-man rescue expedition set off across 600 miles of snow and dangerous, shifting pack ice. Traveling by a combination...
Surprised they started so late in the spring. As the weather warms up, I think obviously it'd be colder in the winter, but better chance of it being solid ice on your way on sled to reach them.
Of dog sled and whale.
I'm sure they knew the ice patterns better than I do, though, so.
Traveling by a combination of dog sled and whaleboat, it took 3 grueling months to reach Bennett Island, where they found no sign of Baron Toll. Just an abandoned campsite, some scientific observations, and a note. Departing south today, it read, we have provisions for 14 to 20 days. All are in good health. The note was dated the 26th of October. It was 9 months old. No sign of Toll or his 3 companions was ever found. Despite its failure, Kolchak's daring rescue mission won him national fame and the Imperial Geographical Society's highest award, the Konstantin Medal. It also won him a nickname, Kolchak Polyarny, Polar Kolchak. Returning to Yakutsk in January 1904, Kolchak learned that Japan had attacked Russia's Far Eastern base at Port Arthur, and war had been declared. Here was an opportunity for action, and the service to the motherland that Kolchak craved. He immediately requested a transfer to the front. But first, he met his fiancée, Sofia Fyodorovna, in Irkutsk for their postponed wedding. 4 days later, he left for the Far East. The world expected Russia, a great imperial power, to easily defeat Japan, an Asiatic upstart, according to racial views of the time. But instead, the war proved a frustrating and humiliating experience for Russia's military, with devastating defeats on land and sea, leading to a political crisis at home.
Japan is fascinating, and how was it the Meiji period, or it's that one stop in Asia after, you know, India had been subdued by European powers, and, you know, Siam, you know, Southeast Asia had been largely subdued. The Indonesian islands, the Philippine Islands, and mainland China, and then finally they go to Japan, and Japan has been able to kind of see all this. And they're like, what's the saying? If you can't beat them, join them, you know? And then they're like the final one, like, we're not going to be conquered by the European powers like before. And then they defeat Russia here. It's just an awesome story. And you got to respect it.
Leading to a political crisis at home. There was little Lieutenant Kolchak could do to change the tide of war, bottled up with Russia's Pacific Fleet in Port Arthur. He nevertheless served with distinction and courage. As commander of a small, aging destroyer, his main role was laying mines at sea. In December 1904, one of his mines scored a major success, sinking the Japanese cruiser Takasago. But the repetitive nature of his duties bored Kolchak, and he was...
Guys, question. Could you make... I'm trying to think of an idea that doesn't cause too much drag on the ship, and then it slows it too much, and then you're susceptible to, like, submarine attacks. But could you put a long kind of underwater chain link fence that you can put in front of you, that as you drive through, the mines will hit the fence, or like string of chain that blows it up before you get to it? Was that just not practical, or am I not thinking of something that would just make it not work?
Takasago scored a major success, sinking the Japanese cruiser Takasago. But the repetitive nature of his duties bored Kolchak, and he was dogged by ill health. In December 1904, the Japanese got close enough to Port Arthur to shell Russian warships with their land-based artillery. Ship by ship, Russia's Pacific Fleet was sent to the bottom. Days later, Port Arthur surrendered. Kolchak was among the 25,000 Russian prisoners, though as a sick and wounded officer, he was repatriated a few months later and returned to his wife in St. Petersburg. The war had been...
So far, some really cool backstory, and I especially love the Arctic expedition part in the beginning. That's kind of personal to me, that I like it, because I love those stories. And the expeditions seem to end much better than the ones I usually see, which are more horrific.
The war had been a demoralizing affair for Russia, and for Kolchak personally, though he received several medals for his leadership and bravery.
Just wondering, just in case, does anyone know if Port Arthur ever sees freezing over waters? And if not, would that have been their only warm water port? Russian Empire is
1914,
huge.
the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo sparks an international crisis. Austria-Hungary accuses Serbia of responsibility for the crime and plans to retaliate. This causes Nicholas II to mobilize Russia's army to
Serbia had Montenegro too, huh?
support Serbia, a Slavic ally.
Okay.
In response, Austria's ally, Germany, declares war on Russia. Soon, all the great European empires are at war.
Guys, Serbia and Russia still sort of have that relationship today, right? Like, Serbia is kind of an island of more Russia support in the Balkans compared to its neighbors, right?
That summer, as the Russian
gotta stop
army
pausing.
blundered towards disaster in East Prussia, 39-year-old Captain Kolchak took command of a destroyer flotilla in Russia's Baltic Fleet. The previous year, he'd been described in an official report as an outstanding officer in every respect. Firm character, well-mannered, very disciplined. Kolchak was, in every way, a model Tsarist officer. Now in the Baltic, he and his flotilla would enjoy notable success, despite the overwhelming superiority of the German Navy.
Is that sail rigging? It's such an intimidating looking battleship. You know, steel World War I looking battleship with some sail rigs.
Of the German Navy. Once more, mine warfare was the Russians' favored tactic.
I need to shut up. I need to stop talking. I'm sorry. Okay.
His flotilla would enjoy notable success, despite the overwhelming superiority of the German Navy. Once more, mine warfare was the Russians' favored tactic. In the early days of the conflict, Kolchak's flotilla alone laid 6,000 mines in the Gulf of Finland. These operations effectively shielded the Russian capital from attack by sea. Kolchak went on to direct a series of bold night operations, laying mines on the approaches to enemy ports, including Niemel, Danzig, and Kiel. Kolchak's courageous leadership won him more medals, and a meeting with Emperor Nicholas himself. In 1916, Kolchak was promoted, becoming the youngest admiral in the Russian Navy, with a new role, Commander-in-Chief of the Black Sea Fleet. He arrived at his new headquarters at Sevastopol in Crimea in July. He was accompanied by his wife, Sofia, and their 6-year-old son. The couple had by now lost 2 children in infancy. Across the Black Sea, Kolchak faced Russia's old adversary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. Kolchak quickly adopted an aggressive strategy, laying mines off the enemy's coast and providing naval support for Russian operations near the Caucasus.
Guys, would you want to send a few, because I'm assuming the country that is laying the minefields in this strategic location, I was going to say this, especially in the Gulf of Finland, where you have that long, narrow stretch that goes to your capital. Would you want to, like, put some fake, like, I would assume that you would have very detailed maps for your own ships of where the mines were laid, obviously, for obvious purposes, so you don't run into your own mines. I think it would be interesting if you somehow were able to get a fake map of the minefield in the Gulf of Finland in the hands of, say, the Germans, so that it leads them into believing a certain corridor is free of mines, but it actually was a fake and it's chock full of them. Would that be just too difficult to kind of pull off, maybe?
For Russian operations near the Caucasus. His great hope was to launch an operation to capture the Bosporus Strait, which would be a decisive blow against the Ottomans, and open up a sea route to Russia's western allies. Russia's 1st Naval Infantry Division was created for this task and placed under Kolchak's command. But the operation would never happen. It remained a dream beyond Russia's capabilities. Nevertheless, Kolchak's success in the Black Sea made him famous once more, a celebrated war hero at a time when Russians were desperate for good news. Because from every other quarter, the news was of defeat, chaos, and turmoil.
Uh-oh.
March 1917. On the streets of Russia's capital, renamed Petrograd, there were protests against food prices and the huge sacrifices of the war. It was the start of a revolution. The news took a few days to reach the Black Sea Fleet, 1,000 miles to the south in Crimea.
Is Petrograd named after Peter the Great? Petro? Is it Peter the Great? Why does the name Peter the Great sound strange to me? Am I getting the name wrong here?
Each solution. The news took a few days to reach the Black Sea Fleet, 1,000 miles to the south in Crimea. Admiral Kolchak, determined to prevent any unrest within his fleet, issued a proclamation. I order all officers of the Black Sea Fleet and land forces entrusted to me to continue firmly and unwaveringly to fulfill their duty to the Emperor and Motherland. The very next day, Nicholas II abdicated the throne. For Kolchak, it was a bewildering blow. Duty, discipline, loyalty to sovereign and motherland were all he knew, and he foresaw chaos ahead. In contrast, most of his sailors celebrated the news of revolution in Petrograd. Their life was one of grim conditions and brutal discipline. Finally, here was a chance to overturn that hated regime.
Look at how big that gun is. Oh my god.
Their life was one of grim conditions and brutal discipline.
Holy
Finally,
crap.
here was a chance to overturn that hated regime. In Sevastopol, sailors elected their own Soviet council and formed their own committees. Initial demands included renaming every ship which carried an imperial name. Discipline and respect for authority began to collapse. Kolchak maintained a high tempo of military operations to keep his men occupied, but privately talked of facing the disgrace of a senseless mutiny in wartime. For 3 months, he held the fleet together, with firm leadership and careful compromises with his sailors. But Bolshevik agitators were at work amongst the men. They wanted the capitalist war ended immediately, and Tsarist officers like Kolchak removed from command. In June, the crew of his own flagship, the Georgy Pobedonosets, confronted the Admiral. They demanded that all officers be stripped of their sidearms and swords. To avoid bloodshed, Kolchak agreed. But rather than hand over his own ceremonial sword, he hurled it into the sea. Even the Japanese, our enemies, let me keep my weapons.
He was like, you don't deserve this.
He told his men. You will not have them now.
This is such an interesting scenario that I'm sure happens in cycles throughout history, where you have some good points on the people uprising, but you also have some good points on the people resisting, in that, yeah, good points of being mistreated, but like, oh my God, you guys are doomed. So you just want to throw out all order and just be like, and I'm sure like the disrespect, I just imagine someone who just disrespects them so much, but like you can't do anything in the moment. Just, okay, I'm just throwing my sword out. Anything I say like that, guys, where a lot of the times I question if I'm being too confident in what I say when I don't know enough. So if you think that's wrong, please let me know.
A few days later, Kolchak resigned his command and travelled to Petrograd. His wife and son remained in Crimea. He would not see them again. Kolchak had already publicly denounced the reforms of Russia's new provisional government, which he believed were destroying the military. Now, the story of his defiance in the face of mutiny made headlines across Russia. Kolchak's reputation among Russian conservatives was sky high. They even wondered if he might be the military dictator the country needed to restore law and order. Such whispers alarmed Russia's provisional government. The new Minister of War, Alexander Kerensky, may even have seen Kolchak as a potential rival. So he met with Kolchak and informed him that he was to be sent abroad as part of a military mission to the Western Allies.
This isn't interesting when it comes to just revolutions in general. Some are more drastic and bloody and just than others, right? But this a just reason for wanting to overthrow because of unfairness is one thing, but people tend to think that the ones in power are the only power-hungry ones, and they don't think that, as always happens, the people who then overthrow them are going to search to get in power and then are going to be just as power-hungry. And this isn't an argument to resist revolution of people that are kings or something and are oppressing the population, but I think it's important to realize that people and greed and the wanting of power is not exclusive to the ones that are currently in power. It's just everyone is people, everyone are human beings, and you act certain ways in power. And it's just so ironic how oftentimes in these revolutions, you just replace it with another upper class of rulers who are going to try and do anything to hold on to that power in a way that they had accused the people they overthrew of doing with that power. And there's something infuriating and yet just, because if I say, oh, you can't do that, then I'm trying to say that you should never revolt against an oppressive ruler. And so this has no message. I have no message I'm trying to give here, or point I make, or I do have a point I'm trying to make, but I have no message of what to do. It's fascinating, in my opinion.
In truth, it was what Kolchak himself described as a form of political exile. That summer, Kolchak sailed via Norway to Britain, then to the United States of America.
Really? Welcome.
He met with President Wilson and senior...
Instead of going here, he should have gone right here. I would have taken care of him. That was stupid.
He met with President Wilson and senior U.S. naval officers. But plans for meaningful military cooperation between Russia and the Allies were clearly going nowhere. In San Francisco, Kolchak accepted an invitation to return to Russia to enter politics as a candidate for the Cadets, Russia's last non-socialist political party. But in Japan, en route home, he received shocking news. There had been a second revolution in Russia.
October?
The Bolsheviks had seized power. Lenin was now in charge. Kolchak was appalled by the October Revolution of 1917. He despised Lenin and the Bolsheviks, who'd soon rename themselves the Russian Communist Party. The chief cause of his hostility was Lenin's plan to make an immediate peace with Germany. Like many Tsarist officers, Kolchak regarded Russia's commitments to her World War I allies as sacred. Lenin's negotiations with the Germans were both dishonorable and treasonous. Kolchak's course of action was clear. As an admiral of the Russian fleet, I considered our allied commitment to the war against Germany to remain in full force. The only form in which I could continue my service to the motherland, which was now in the hands of German agents and traitors, was to join the war effort against Germany on the side of our allies.
But how?
Kolchak offered his services to the British. They initially planned to send him to Mesopotamia, but soon backed him for a much larger role. Fighting still raging on World War I's Western Front, the Allies were desperate for Russia to rejoin the struggle against Germany.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about the Austrian-Italian front in World War I.
Were desperate for Russia to rejoin the struggle against Germany. This meant removing Lenin and the Bolsheviks from power, who that July added to their crimes by executing Emperor Nicholas II and his entire family at Yekaterinburg. Therefore, as civil war engulfed Russia, the Allies would back the anti-Bolshevik forces, known as the Whites, against the Bolsheviks, the Reds. The British now put forward Admiral Kolchak as a man who could unify and lead White Russian forces in the Far East, a proposal that met with widespread support. In September 1918, Kolchak arrived in Vladivostok. Here he learned that anti-Bolshevik groups had recently met in Ufa and established a new provisional all-Russian government. This was effectively a continuation of the provisional government that had been swept aside by the Bolsheviks. Therefore, it had little support from Kolchak and other conservatives, who blamed the provisional government for leading Russia into chaos in the first place. That month, the advance of Bolshevik Red Army troops forced the provisional government to abandon Ufa and retreat to Omsk. Kolchak traveled 2,800 miles by train to join it. On the 5th of November 1918, after much discussion, he agreed to become the provisional government's Minister of War and Navy. 2 days later, Kolchak formed a general staff and went to the front to assess the situation. Across Russia, the military situation was incredibly complex. White Russian forces were scattered on Russia's periphery. General Boldyrev commanded 180,000 provisional government troops on the Omsk front. General Denikin's volunteer army in southern Russia had around 50,000 troops. The northern Russian government, a small white Russian enclave, had just 6,000 troops.
Jeez.
They were supported by Allied contingents of varying sizes, mostly in support and training roles. The Allies' most important contribution was sending arms, ammunition and supplies via Russia's seaports. Then there was the Czechoslovak Legion, about 50,000 strong, on the Omsk front. The Legion's story was an odd one. The unit, made up mostly of Czech volunteers, had been fighting alongside the Russians on the Eastern Front against the Germans. When the Bolsheviks took over and made peace with Germany, the Legion had received permission to travel by rail to Vladivostok, to then travel by sea to France, to rejoin the Allies.
That's a long detour.
But the Bolsheviks then changed their mind and tried to disarm the Czechs, who fought back. The Legion was now stranded in Russia, but held key points along the Trans-Siberian Railway, the crucial east-west transport and supply route. To further complicate the picture, Russia's civil war raged alongside several national wars and independence struggles in Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, and elsewhere. Russia's white forces, fragmented both geographically and often politically, faced the gigantic resources of Lenin's Bolshevik Russian state, controlling Russia's major cities, industrial centers and transport hubs, with around 800,000 troops under its command. It was a daunting prospect. The challenging military situation did nothing to ease political tensions among the whites. They included, at one extreme, left-wing socialist revolutionaries who'd led the February Revolution. At the other extreme, right-wing conservatives who wanted to restore the monarchy.
Interesting.
This latter group had no more time for socialists and provisional governments. They believed only a strong dictator could save Russia now. On the 18th of November, they made their move. 300 Cossack troops rode into Omsk and arrested all the socialist revolutionary delegates they could find. The provisional government was abolished by its own executive.
Wait, so was that a civil war squared? Maybe that was stupid. A civil war in a civil war?
The provisional government was abolished by its own executive, the Council of Ministers. It then moved to elect a new supreme ruler of Russia, who would wield complete dictatorial power. The man they chose was Admiral Alexander Kolchak, a proven leader with a brilliant military record, widely respected, in close contact with the Western Allies. Above all, he was a man who shared their vision that only a return to law and order could save Russia from chaos. Kolchak himself had not sought the position of supreme ruler, believing others were better suited. But duty had called, and he would answer. We hope you've enjoyed part 1 of our series on Admiral Kolchak, and if you'd like to be the first to see part 2, ad-free, as well as episodes of other upcoming series, such as Napoleon in Egypt, we're delighted to announce that Epic History TV is now part of the Nebula streaming platform. On Nebula, you can watch all our videos.
It's a great video, guys. I'm going to make sure to watch until there's any promo codes or anything, but love y'all. Would appreciate any comments down below as always. If I said something that was just wrong, I sounded too confident, call me out on it. If you could answer any of my questions, any comments at all, I'd really appreciate it. Hope you guys are all doing well. and I'll see you next time. I do want to make sure I at
Videos,
least
past, present, and
go to
away
the
that would
slash
never be
history.
possible on $300. That's a one-off payment. The holiday season, Nebula now offers lifetime every great
Do they have a promo code?
with lifetime. So huge now pledgers, supporters, and a huge thanks in the rewarded instructions to invest.
Okay, so there isn't a promo code. It's just a different. Just want to double check. Okay.
Nebula. You can watch all our videos, past, present, and future, entirely ad-free. Knowing
Obviously, Nebula, if you enjoy history, a lot of different history, great YouTube history channels coming with videos that are exclusive. Make sure to check that out. And hopefully I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.